Birdie is one of those names that really never disappears from the internet. A continuous story that feels like it's been told 1,000 times over. A name you've probably seen 1,000,000 times. And every time it seems like the controversy has finally settled, something new pulls it back into the spotlight. Another accusation, another explanation, another wave of people arguing over what's true, what's exaggerated, and what should have never happened in the first place. And I'm very sure this is likely to occur again. And that raises an uncomfortable question. Why does the same artist keep ending up at the center of situations serious? This isn't a story about one bad post or a misunderstood clip. Birdie, also known as Jack, has been involved in a long chain of incidents that many people consider deeply disturbing, while others argue they've been taken out of context or misunderstood entirely. Just one situation after another. Over time, the conversation stopped being about a single mistake and started becoming about a pattern. Some viewers see Birdie as a victim of online grooming, untreated trauma, and an audience that encouraged outraged, unhealthy behavior. Others see one person, someone who repeatedly crossed boundaries, failed to take responsibility, and was enabled by sympathy rather than accountability. Most people fall somewhere in the middle, confused, overwhelmed, and unsure what to believe anymore. And honestly, all those statements do hold up. However, that confusion is exactly why this story matters, because Birdie's situation isn't just about Birdie. It reflects a bigger problem with how the internet, specifically the art community, handles creators who are vulnerable, controversial, and constantly surrounded by attention. When trauma becomes public content, and when audiences feel personally responsible for someone they've never met, the lines between empathy and enablement start to blur. In this video, we're going to break down who Birdie is, how his online presence developed, and each controversy unfolded, as best to my ability as I could, step by step. We'll separate what's documented from what's disrupted, look at how Birdie responds to different points, and examine how the internet itself played a role in escalating these situations, and ultimately lended a hand into shaping who he is today. It's your fault!
Your thoughts!
Sorry, I'm keeping that in. This isn't about attacking someone for the sake of drama, and it's not about excusing harmful behavior either.
Jingle, jingle.
It's about understanding how repeated boundary failures online happen, and why the same mistakes keep being made by creators and audiences alike. As always, I want to make an effort to educate our community in the hope to prevent situations like this from continuing to occur, because they're so common. So again, by the end of this video, the goal isn't outrage, it's clarity, because if we keep treating stories like this as entertainment, or instead of warnings, we're guaranteed to see them repeat with a different name next time. This history gives us an opportunity to learn and grow as a community. Hi, if you're not familiar to the channel, welcome to Honey Hug TV. My name is Angel, and some people call me Bunny, but this is Bunny and his name is Bunny. Before we start, I'd like to thank my members for helping support my channel and helping me pay my bills. Anyways, yes, you, consider my offer. Become a bunny, okay? Become a member. Badges, emojis, polls, shoutouts, and you directly support the channel. Literally, you help me decide what content to make. Only for $3 to $5. It's a good time, so consider it. Like many, Birdie didn't enter the internet with controversy attached to his name. His early presence was rooted in creativity and niche communities. He gravitated towards animation and art-focused spaces, aka the art community, where personal expression was not just encouraged, but rewarded. The art community often, and still does, attract younger users, emotionally open people, and creators who blur the line between personal diary and public content. I mean, there's a ton of art videos out here, and like, some people be sharing their business hard over here, and it's kind of concerning. I just hope what they tell us, they get a chance to tell their therapist, because I am deeply concerned. Anyways, from the start, Birdie's content was deeply personal. He didn't just post animations or art. It was obviously much deeper than that. Jack shared feelings, mental health struggles, and experiences that made viewers feel like they were getting an unfiltered look into his life. For many of his watchers, especially younger fans, this honestly felt refreshing, and it was incredibly edgy, and oh boy, to be edgy on the internet, people ate that up, and it created a sense of closeness. Like, Birdie wasn't some random kid, but someone they actually knew. But that quickly turned into a defining feature of his channel. Birdie's audience wasn't purely built on entertainment value. It was built on emotional resonance. Fans related to his vulnerability, defended him fiercely, and often felt invested in his well-being. In online spaces, that kind of attachment can be powerful, but it can also be dangerous. When creators rely on their audience for emotional validation, an audience feels responsible for a creator's mental state, boundaries start to erode. This was the start of something bigger. Another important detail is Birdie's age and environment during his early years online. He was very young when he began gaining attention, and much of his internet exposure happened while he was still developing emotionally. This matters not as an excuse, but as context. Young creators often grow up publicly, making mistakes in front of thousands of people, instead of learning privately. Every misstep becomes permanent, archived, and amplified. Low-key, kinda embarrassing. But I digress. I'm just glad that I didn't start making videos until I got a little bit older. As Birdie's platform grew, so did the intensity of his interactions. He frequently engaged directly with fans in comments, private messages, and community spaces. While this isn't unusual on its own, the tone of these interactions often crossed from creator to audience communication into something more emotionally entangled. Fans weren't just viewers, they were confidants, defenders, and sometimes mediators during conflicts. This kind of dynamic can feel supportive on the surface, but it creates pressure on both sides. Fans feel responsible for protecting the creator, while the creator feels obligated to constantly explain, justify, and emotionally perform. Over time, this destroys healthy distance. Problems start being handled privately and instead unfold in public view, shaped by the audience's reaction. Over time, patterns begin to emerge. When Birdie's faced criticism or pushback, he often responds emotionally. Apologies, explanations, and defenses blend together, sometimes contradicting earlier statements, and man, this happened a lot. For supporters, this reinforced the idea that he was overwhelmed and misunderstood. For critics, it raised a red flag about accountability and consistency. It's also important to understand the type of internet spaces Birdie occupied. Animation meme communities, fandom-driven platforms, and Discord servers often operate with loose moderation and blurred social norms. These environments oversharing is normal. Parasocial relationships are common, and serious conversations happen alongside jokes and memes. That combination can create situations where lines are crossed without anyone stopping to ask if they should be. That goes to say, please, when online, be careful of these spaces. Make sure you know what you're getting yourself into. Another factor was the algorithm itself. Emotional content performs well online, obviously. Vulnerability, distress, and personal struggle often generate more engagement than neutral updates. Over time, creators can feel subtly encouraged to keep sharing more personal details because those moments receive the strongest response. For someone already struggling with boundaries, this feedback loop can make oversharing feel not just normal, but necessary. Nowadays, you see this quite often, and I mean you see it way too often. Honestly, I prefer not knowing certain things. By the time Birdie's first major controversy surfaced, the foundation was already set. The young creator, emotionally dependent on his audience, a fanbase trained to protect rather than question, and an online environment that rewarded vulnerability without enforcing boundaries. I know I'm repeating myself, but I need to drill it into your skull how important all of this is for context purposes and for learning purposes. None of this means that what came next was inevitable, but it does explain why, when serious issues arose, they didn't happen in isolation. They grew out of an ecosystem where emotional intensity was constant, accountability was inconsistent, and attention never really turned off. To understand Birdie's later controversies, you have to understand this first phase. not because it excuses anything, but because it shows how the conditions for repeated problems were quietly forming long before most people were even paying attention. Birdie's name became permanently tied to one specific incident, an event that still shapes how everything else about him is interpreted. Thanks. Even years later, it's often the first thing brought up whether his behavior is discussed, and it's almost impossible to understand the broader controversy without addressing it directly. Like, holy shit, it is really hard to look over this. While Birdie was still a minor, he recorded and shared material involving his pet ferret, and that implied sexual intent. The content spread quickly within online communities and sparked immediate outrage. Even saying it, it's just hard. It's disturbing to say. I did not look forward to this part of the script. Anyways, for many viewers, this wasn't just inappropriate, it was shocking and deeply disturbing. Even people unfamiliar with Birdie's work were suddenly aware of his name, not because of his content, but because of the severity of what they'd seen. But honestly, I don't know what compelled Jack to even share this with the entirety of the internet. All I know is that I'm scarred, and I really do think that certain people should just not have pets. Birdie later claimed that he'd been groomed online and manipulated in believing that this behavior was acceptable. According to his explanation, older individuals in online spaces normalized and encouraged the act, framing it in ways that blurred moral boundaries for someone who was still very young and impressionable. He positioned himself as a victim of exposure to harmful communities and ideas before he had the emotional tools to process them. So I guess that answered my question. The explanation immediately split the public opinion. On one side, people emphasized Birdie's age at the time and the reality of online grooming, which is true. They argued that children exposed to extreme content could be pushed into actions they don't fully understand, especially when approval and validation are involved. From that perspective, the incident was seen as a failure of online safety systems and adult responsibility, not just individual choices. On the other hand, many viewers rejected that framing entirely. They argued that regardless of age, the act itself crossed a line so extreme that it couldn't be excused or softened by context. For these critics, the explanation felt less like accountability and more like a deflection, an attempt to redirect blame without fully confronting the harm done. What made the situation even more complicated was how Birdie addressed it publicly. His responses changed over time, sometimes focusing on the trauma, sometimes on the misunderstanding, and sometimes on the exhaustion of being judged repeatedly for the same event. To supporters, this inconsistency reflected someone struggling to articulate a painful experience. To critics, it reinforced the idea that Birdie was unable or unwilling to take a clear responsibility. Another important factor was how the internet reacted structurally. Platforms removed content, discussions exploded across forums, and Birdie's reputation became permanently marked. From that point forward, every action he took was viewed through the lens of that incident. He himself was viewed suspiciously, emotional responses were scrutinized, silence was seen as avoidance. This is where the idea of a point of no return comes in. For many creators, controversy fades with time. In Birdie's case, this incident became a reference point that never disappeared. Even when unrelated issues came up later, they were often framed as extensions of the original event rather than standalone problems. What's critical to understand is that this moment didn't just damage Jack's public image, it reshaped his relationship with the internet entirely. Trust was gone, good faith, and any attempt at self-explanation was met with immediate skepticism. People did not trust his okay? At the same time, Birdie's own behavior after the incident made recovery harder. Instead of stepping back from the internet, he remained active, emotionally engaged, and reactive. Rather than establishing distance, he continued sharing personal thoughts and struggles publicly. This kept the controversy alive and prevented the space needed for genuine reflection. Over time, the conversation stopped being about the incident itself and started being about what it represented. To many people, it symbolized the complete collapse of boundaries Between private and public, creator and audience accountability and sympathy, it became shorthanded for everything people felt was wrong with how the internet handles vulnerable creators and serious misconduct. This is why the internet still matters today, not because it needs to be discussed endlessly, but because it sets the framework for every controversy that followed. It defined how people interpret Birdie's intentions, how they judged his explanations, and how little patience they had left when new problems emerged. From this point on, Birdie wasn't just a creator who made mistakes. He was a creator whose past ensured that nothing would ever be viewed in isolation again. And that context is crucial as we move on to the next phase of this story, where conflicts with other creators, fans, and close relationships begin to spiral in very public ways. After the initial controversy, Birdie's online presence didn't quiet down. It became more volatile. This phase of his story isn't defined by a single shocking incident, but a series of conflicts that followed in a similar pattern we discussed before. We discussed this before, okay? Sorry, I just don't have the energy to redo that whole line. Arguments that started privately became public. Personal grievances turned into videos, posts, and screenshots, and each time, the audience was pulled directly into the middle. I mean, how could we not? At the time of my very young age, I was on the edge of my seat, and honestly, watching any video talking about any of these situations were a great background noise while I drew on my phone and sketched on my sketchbook. So, oh, and yes, I did draw on my phone, and if you saw my art from like 8 years ago, you would be able to tell because I was not good at it. Anyways, a recurring theme during this period was Birdie's intense, emotionally charged relationships with other creators and people in his online circles. These weren't casual disagreements over content, they were deeply personal fallouts involving accusations of manipulation, emotional harm, obsession, and betrayal, often aired out in real time and displayed all over the community like news channels. In several situations, Birdie accused others of mistreating him emotionally, taking advantage of his vulnerability, or pushing him into unhealthy dynamics. In response, those same people often describe Birdie as emotionally overwhelming, unpredictable, and difficult to disengage from. Each side presented receipts, explanations, and personal accounts, and viewers were left to piece together the truth from the fragments. It was a whole lot of work. What's important here isn't deciding who was right in every individual conflict, it's recognizing the pattern. Birdie's relationship often appeared to lack clear boundaries. Friends became emotional support systems, collaborators became confidants, disagreements escalated because there was no separation between them. Personal pain and public platforms, it all bundled together, okay? When something went wrong, the first thing wasn't to resolve it privately, but to explain it publicly, often when emotions were still raw. And this is just a recipe for disaster. It was not a great time to make specific connections in the space, if you get what I mean. This is where power dynamics become relevant. Even when Birdie wasn't the largest creator in the room, he still had an audience. When he spoke publicly about conflicts, his viewers reacted, defending him, confronting others, and amplifying the situation. Whether intentional or not, the attention changed the stakes of every disagreement. So, some former friends described feeling trapped in these dynamics. Walking away risked backlash, speaking up risked being framed as abuse. Staying silent allowed narratives to form without their inputs. In these situations, everyone involved felt cornered, and the escalation became almost inevitable. And walking on eggshells? Don't even start. Birdie's emotional state also played a role. His responses to conflict were often intense and immediate. Apologies blended with accusations, self-reflections, mixed with defensiveness. At times, he framed himself as taking responsibility, while simultaneously explaining why others were at fault. To supporters, this came across as someone struggling to process their complex emotions, Or if you were a supporter and you were young, you didn't really understand what was going on at all. To critics, it felt manipulative, a way to control the narrative while appearing vulnerable. Saying critics is always so funny to me when making these types of videos. I mean, everyone was a critic, and I mean everyone, even 11-year-olds. Another factor was timing. Many of these conflicts played out while Birdie was already under heavy scrutiny. Because his past, people were primed to interpret his behavior in the worst possible light ever. Even legitimate grievances were met with people did not trust him again. Even when responsible boundaries were questioned. This created a feedback loop where Birdie felt constantly attacked and his reactions became extreme as a result. But again, context doesn't erase impact. Publicly sharing private disputes doesn't just affect people directly involved, it mobilizes audiences. Viewers become investigators, judges, and defenders. Nuances disappear, sides form, and once that happens, the original issue often becomes secondary to winning the narrative. Everyone wants to be on the right side, and if only things were that simple. Over time, these repeated conflicts damaged Birdie's credibility. Even people who initially sympathized with him began to notice how often similar situations keep happening. It just kept happening. When the same patterns repeated across multiple relationships, audiences naturally started asking harder questions. Even me, okay? At my young age, I was like, okay, this is getting out of hand. By this stage, Birdie's story was no longer just about past controversies, it was about his behavior now. Critics argue that regardless of his trauma, he was responsible for how he treated others. Yes. Supporters argued that he was being re-traumatized by constant scrutiny and abandonment. Also a good yes. And the internet, as usual, rewarded the loudest and most emotionally charged responses. This phase cemented a critical shift in perception. Birdie was no longer seen as someone trying to move on from a past mistake. He was seen as someone stuck in a cycle, unable to maintain stable relationships without public fallout. And that cycle set the stage for the next and perhaps most alarming set of controversies, one involving minors, sexualized content, and failures that couldn't be explained away as simple as interpersonal drama. At this point in Birdie's online history, public trust was already fragile, so when new concerns surfacing involving minors and sexualized content, the reaction was immediate and severe. This was not just another controversy, it felt like confirmation that the same boundaries kept being crossed in different forms. One of the most widely discussed issues involving Birdie's response to a sexually explicit fan art created by a minor, rather than clearly discouraging the content or setting firm boundaries, Jack engaged with it in many people thought it was inappropriate. The exact nature of the interaction became less important than what it represented, a creator failing to shut down sexual content involving someone underage. This is where the conversation shifted from personal mistakes to ethical responsibility. Creators, especially those with young audiences, are expected to enforce clear limits. Even passive approval can send the wrong message. When a power imbalance exists between an adult creator and a minor fan, responsibility is not shared equally. It rests overwhelmingly on the creator to stop the situation immediately, and that didn't happen. And if I remember off the top of my head, Jack was 19 and the fan was around 15. Correct me if I'm wrong. Birdie's defenders argued that there was no malicious intent. They claimed he didn't fully understand the implications or that the interaction was misinterpreted. But critics pushed back hard on that framing. Intent, they argued, did not erase the impact. Failing to act still creates harm, regardless of motivation. What made the backlash even stronger was Birdie's public commentary after. In attempting to explain himself, he made statements that appeared to minimize the seriousness of the minors engaging in the explicit content. These remarks alarmed viewers who believed they normalized behavior that should always be treated as a red line. By this stage, most people felt Birdie had enough experience with controversy to understand how sensitive these issues were. The expectation wasn't perfect, it was caution. When that caution was missing, critics questioned whether Birdie was capable of maintaining a platform responsibly. And as I write this, I can't help but laugh and shake my head because now the answer is so super obvious. Another layer to this controversy was how fans responded. Some rushed to Birdie's defense, attacking critics and dismissing concerns over as they were saying that the critics were overreacting. Others expressed disappointment, saying that this was the moment they could no longer support him. And as always, the internet splits into camps, the classic blue versus red, but at this time, the stakes felt higher. Platforms and community moderators became more involved as well. Content was flagged, discussions were locked, and Birdie's reputation suffered further damage. This was no longer about cancel culture. For many, it was about protecting minors and enforcing standards that shouldn't be negotiable. What's more important to note is that this controversy didn't exist in a vacuum. It was interpreted through everything that came before it. Before Birdie already had history of boundary issues, people were far less willing to extend benefit of the doubt. This margin for error was gone. The moment marked a turning point. Even sympathetic viewers began to question whether or not Jack should continue creating content without significant change, calling for stepping away, seeking professional help, or removing himself from a fan-heavy spaces grew louder. This phase of the story highlights a harsh truth about online platforms. Vulnerability does not cancel out responsibility. Trauma does not excuse poor boundaries, and being misunderstood in the past doesn't justify carelessness in the present. That leads directly into the next chapter, where trust, money, and victim narratives became entangled, raising even more difficult questions about accountability and the audience responsibility. As Birdie's controversies piled up, another sensitive issue entered the picture: money, specifically how audience donations intersected with personal crises, public narrative, and trust. For many creators, crowdfunding is a legitimate way to survive. In Birdie's case, however, it became yet another flashpoint for backlash. During periods of intense conflict and distress, cough cough if you know, and if not, you've been living under a rock. I won't go in full detail because that whole situation opens a whole other route that probably will be its own video. So, Birdie turned to his audience for financial support. Framing donations are necessary to escape harmful living situations or stabilize his life. Supporters responded quickly, and many felt emotionally invested in helping someone they believed was endangered or being mistreated. Donations poured in and often accompanied by messages of concern and encouragement, hoping him the best. And in the haze of the situation with his roommates, people really saw him as a victim. Well, at least Jack really did make himself seem like he was one. But as details emerged, questions followed. People began pointing out inconsistencies between funds were reportedly for and how they appeared to be used. Screenshots, timelines, and statements circulated suggesting that some of the donation money went towards purchasing that didn't align to the urgency or the purpose originally presented. He spent money on what he was not supposed to spend money on. Basically, whether intentional or not, the perception of misuse alone was enough to trigger serious backlash. I would not want to donate my money to someone and then they use it for something else. That really peeves me hard because I've been in this situation before. This is where trust becomes fragile. Crowdfunding relies mostly entirely on honesty and transparency. Donors aren't just giving money, they're buying into a narrative. When a story shifts or becomes unclear, supporters feel betrayed. In Birdie's case, past controversies amplify this reaction. People were already questioning his judgment, so financial ambiguity hit harder than it might have otherwise. Birdie defended himself by explaining that that circumstances changed, expenses weren't always predictable, and online speculation exaggerated normal spending. Supporters accept those explanations, and others didn't. Once again, the internet split into familiar sides. What makes the situation especially complex is the role of emotional storytelling. When creators frame themselves as a victim in need of rescue, audiences feel moral pressure to help them. That pressure can override skepticism, especially in parasocial relationships where viewers feel personally responsible for a creator's safety. But emotional urgency also raises ethical questions. At what point does sharing personal crisis become manipulation, even unintentional? And how much responsibility does a creator have to step back when they're no longer in the position to communicate clearly or responsibly? For some supporters, this controversy was the final straw. By this stage, Birdie's credibility was severely damaged. Every explanation was scrutinized, I love that word, and the possibility of rebuilding trust felt increasingly distant. All of this leads into the final question. Why does situations like this keep happening? And what are we actually supposed to learn from them? By this point, it's clear that Birdie's story isn't just about one person making repeated mistakes. It's about an ecosystem that allows and sometimes encourages those mistakes to keep happening. The internet is uniquely bad at handling vulnerable creators. Platforms reward emotional openness and they give them attention, engagement, and validation. When someone shares trauma or distress publicly, they're often met with sympathy, support, and a surge in visibility. That feedback loop can intentionally or unintentionally teach creators that the more personal and raw they are, the more their audience responds. But vulnerability without structure is dangerous. Creators aren't given clear guidances on boundaries, crisis management, or when to step away. There's no built-in system that says you should handle this or shouldn't handle this publicly, or this situation requires offline support. Instead, everything is processed through content posts and reactions, all under the pressure of real-time judgment. Oh, and dear viewer, I'm looking at you, and I'm looking at myself too. No matter how we bend it, audiences play a role too. Parasocial relationships blur the line between empathy and responsibility. Viewers begin to feel like protectors, therapists, or even saviors. When a creator frames a situation as a crisis, fans rush to help defend and donate. Questioning the narrative can feel like a betrayal, even when it's necessary, which is at all times. At the same time, critics often swing too far into opposite directions. When trust is broken, every action is interpreted as malicious. There is little room for growth, learning, or quiet change. The internet doesn't reward slow improvement. It rewards a spectacle. Most media does. This creates a trap, so let's talk about it. More often than not, creators who are struggling feel forced to explain themselves constantly. Silence is seen as a guilt, and stepping back is seen as avoidance. So they stay in line, emotionally exposed, making things worse, and each attempt to regain control becomes another moment for scrutiny and escalation. You know what I'm trying to say. Age also matters. Many artists rise to prominence before they even developed the emotional tools that they need to handle public pressure. Mistakes that would normally be part of growing up become permanent records. When those mistakes are serious, the consequences are amplified, and so is the damage. Jack's story reflects all of this. Trauma intersection with attention, boundaries collapsing, audience stepping into roles they were never meant to fill, and platforms watching from a distance, intervening only when rules are clearly broken. If there's a lesson here, it's that the internet is not equipped to be a substitute for support systems, accountability structures, or personal growth. Until those gaps are addressed, stories like this will keep repeating, with different creators, different controversies, and the same outcomes. By the end of Jack's story, it becomes clear why so many people walk away feeling unsettled. There's no clean ending, no moment where everything is resolved and everyone agrees on what should happen next. And that discomfort is the point. Jack isn't just an example of a creator who made mistakes. He's an example of what happens when unresolved trauma, internet attention, and weak boundaries collide. At different moments, he was vulnerable, and at others, careless, sometimes both at once. And the internet struggled to respond to that complexity in a healthy way. Empathy and accountability were treated as opposites when they shouldn't be. It's possible to acknowledge that someone has been harmed by their past while also recognizing that they've caused harm themselves. It's possible to believe parts of someone's story without accepting every explanation at face value. And it's possible to step back from a creator without turning that choice into harassment or cruelty. One of the hardest lessons here is that the internet is not equipped to handle ongoing personal crisis. Audiences are not therapists, and comment sections are not courtrooms. And platforms are reactive, not preventative. When creators rely on public validation to process serious issues, things all the time, every time, escalate instead of healing. There's also a lesson for viewers too. So Supporting someone doesn't mean defending everything they do, helping doesn't mean ignoring red flags, and disengaging isn't abandonment. Sometimes it's the most responsible choice. For creators, the takeaway is even more uncomfortable. Vulnerability can build connection without boundaries. It can also build dependency. Sharing less isn't dishonesty, and stepping away isn't failure. And getting help offline is not something the internet can replace. And it's nothing to be ashamed of either. Jack's story isn't unique, and that's what makes it important. Similar situations will keep happening as long as platforms reward emotional exposure without providing guardrails, and as long as audiences are asked to fill those roles they were never meant to play. This video isn't about deciding whether Jack deserves forgiveness or accommodation. It's about recognizing patterns before they repeat. Because if we don't learn from stories like this, we'll keep watching the cycle unfold, just with different names and different timelines. I know I didn't get into every micro detail about the Birdie drama, but I think I hit the biggest nails on the head so we'd be able to have a helpful discussion. And if there's anything I didn't go in depth with that you'd like, I'd look into doing that for you. And if you want more videos that break down different internet controversies with context instead of outrage, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and let me know what story you want to cover next. But hey, was that all of the way? Let's talk. Hi, how are you? It's been a while since I made a longer video. I've been doing a lot of shorts, and it's fun, but it's not the same as this. I enjoy being able to sit down and just getting all my thoughts out, especially after research. I love writing, especially essays. Call me a nerd, it's okay. But making long form content is a nice change of pace. And honestly, I remember when all this started happening, like early on, I was sitting there listening to everything, and every time I was shocked to see it was the same name over and over again. This drama never really stopped, and I literally grew up with it, which is crazy to think about. Around a year ago, when he posted "I'm back" video, I was surprised, but also not at the same time. But I was thinking at the same time, since that he grew up more, surely the antics would stop. But I don't know. The more I watched this video, the more I lost hope. This nagging feeling loomed over my shoulders that this will be the start of something bigger. Anyways, here's to hoping Jack gets some mental help and hoping he abandons his channel and the internet altogether because he needs a fresh start. Alright, thank you everybody for watching, and please take care of yourselves. Okay, bye.